Welcome to the 10th episode of Strong Like a Girl. Today I want to take a look back at the last 9 episodes and share some of the lessons I've learned or some of my favorite moments and encourage you to have a listen to those shows if you haven't already. Quick thank you before we dive in to Sarah Burke at Women in Media. She has taught me a lot about podcasting in a short time. And to Kyla Cottam, who's provided a ton of help and expertise. To our cheerleaders and sponsors for taking a shot on me in this new adventure. And of course, to our guests who trusted me and helped me bring some insight to what strong can mean for all women of all ages. And of course, to you, the folks that listen to the show and give me feedback. Thank you for your honesty. It matters to me to do a good job and to provide good content. So while I understand that every guest may not be for every listener, I hear you on the things you liked or didn't like, and we'll be using those in our analysis as we plan future shows. Collectively, you have all given me a wonderful experience, so thank you. Looking back, there were some really great conversations with great women doing great things. Janet McMahon, who is the first female CEO of Sport Manitoba, was the first guest and really did me a favor by coming on the show. Her willingness to speak about her ALS diagnosis and how she is dealing with it, and the acceptance of why not me instead of why me, really shook me. I think about her and that often, and it has certainly influenced how I deal with things in my own life. She was candid and told me to ask her anything, which I think just proves her courage. What an incredible kickoff to the show. Here's one of my favorite moments from that episode with Janet.
I like to see more kids, like young female kids, get involved. And it doesn't have to be at a high performance level. I just think we need to get more participation. We have to have more access. We have to get more girls doing things. I mean, it's pretty exciting to see what's going on in, professional hockey, women's basketball, and even at the Canada Games in Newfoundland right now. For the first time, we have women's baseball, which is pretty exciting and to see. So we have opportunities out there. We just have to get people in there and active. I think we have to prioritize that physical element for children. And again, it follows through with their mental well-being, their social development. And I'm a huge believer in that, the values of sport. At the same time, we have to make sure that the environment is appropriate and safe, and we have to do it differently. It has been a male-dominant coaching style we've embraced. A lot of girls get involved. They tell us, number one, it's about friends. It's about socialization. Boys, it's not. Sure, it's about fun, but for them, the next things are not necessarily social development or friendships. So I think we have to kind of turn it around. What are we trying to do here? Are we trying to create Olympic athletes, or do we want a healthy population?
Thank you very much, Janet. Heather was our next guest. This was a big deal for me. I met Heather Stephenson as part of my community work with the Brandon Chamber of Commerce, and I liked her as a person. I thought she got a bit of a bad rap from the media and people in general who said she wasn't very engaging or other things like that. And the public, I don't think, ever really got a chance to see who she is. Funny, open, confident, and dare I say, fierce. The things that stayed with me was that she was so candid, and other things about like how her days were extra long because of the time to get ready for on-camera work with hair, makeup, and wardrobe, or about her personal health and how the media kind of just skipped over the seriousness of some of the procedures she had to have and really just wanted to know if they were done in a private clinic. So much of what she was dealing with while dealing with a very big job, and just didn't seem to be a lot of grace from other people. I got a lot of feedback on this episode. People loved that she had a favorite curse word, and they said they'd vote for her, which was kind of funny because now, of course, she's not running for anything. I wanted to show her as a person, a likable person, and not just the party she represented. People also said that they didn't want to listen to the episode when they saw it was her, but they did, and then they were very glad that they did because they ended up liking her and actually got a new take on political positions. Like I said in the episode, leadership is like wearing a tight white spandex dress. It takes an awful lot of guts to wear it, and it's going to show every single flaw you have. I was very grateful that she spoke about separating the comments and the slanderous things from who she is as a person, that they don't know me and they're upset about something that means something to them, but it's not about me personally. She was, as I always find her, Absolutely impressive. Take a listen to one of my favorite moments with that episode with Heather.
The key word is confidence. And I think that is the most important thing that we can teach young women today is to be more confident in what they do. And I think this next generation coming along is much more confident, certainly than I was, growing up. And I think that's a really good thing. They're strong like a woman.
Yeah.
So it's I think it's going to be positive moving forward. I mean, at times I used to sit down and say, "Are you kidding me? I've got to go get my hair done and my makeup done." That's not who I am. Figuring out what to wear on a daily basis because you're out in front of the media all the time. I'd have to stay up later at night being briefed properly and reading the briefing notes and everything else for the next day.
Next up, we have Sarah Pito. And Sarah was the second woman hired on to the Brandon, Manitoba Firefighter Paramedic Squad. And she's likely more incredible than even she knows. What struck me about her story was that these young folks were sent into traumatic situations with no training on how to deal with people's emotions or the trauma that they're actually dealing with in that moment. And I shared a personal story about my family and how I met Sarah during her workday and how she just knew what to do and what to say to me to provide reassurance. The macho persona, the firefighters, and how they pushed back on her because of her gender also really stayed with me. I thought about that long after, and when people say they were threatened, when they're talking about men, they were threatened by her, I really started to wonder if it's more of them questioning their own identity and usefulness, or even greatness in what they would consider a tough profession. And it certainly is a tough profession. But kind of like, if women can do it, does it take some of the elitism out of it for me? So maybe it's about their ego. And I say that not to criticize men. It's more of a question about how we perceive competition and what does our ego do that makes us react in certain ways. I think it's applicable to just about any kind of big transition in life. Sarah's doing some really good work in the emergency services space across Western Canada and deserves all of the accolades she's getting. The other good moment for me was when she shared that there had been an all-women crew at one of our stations for a shift. What an achievement for her, for them, all that came before them. Bravo, Sarah. Here's one of my favorite moments from that episode with Sarah.
It was interesting times. So to back up a little bit, just going through fire college was the first shock. When my first goal was to pass the physical test, that was the most important thing to me because all I'd heard from anyone that I'd shared with that I wanted to be a firefighter was, well, good luck passing the physical. I met a woman once, she tried, she failed. So that was my main goal. After passing the physical test and then going on to the written, that was my first clue that I was into something that was uncharted territory. And that was, I walked into a theater with about a couple hundred people. And it was all men, and the room went silent. And I just was in shock. I'm like, okay, this is not what I was expecting. I thought there would be a few women here, but I could tell that just everything, there was a lot of emotion directed at me, and it wasn't really positive. Then going through the college was tense as well. I mean, you're dealing with a lot of young men in their 20s. Some of them were wonderful. Some of them, I was just a threat. So I was going to somehow take all of their jobs.
In the early 2000s, there wouldn't have been any kind of a quota for women in fire, paramedic, or even police, right? Like, you would have had to pass all the same tests that everybody else. You would have to carry the same loads and all those kinds of things, because obviously you're dealing with things that are critical in nature. So if you can't do the job, then you can't do the job, right? So what do you really think they were worried that you would take their place, or do you think they were just intimidated by the fact that a woman could compete?
There's a whole lot to unpack there on why a lot of the men that I went to school with felt that way. A very macho stereotype where you have to be so manly and tough. And I think some men are attracted to the career because of that stereotype too. So it might be rather threatening to have a young, more feminine woman in their space. But yeah, I think now back to the topic on quotas. Yeah, I certainly passed all the same tests that all of the other applicants did. And we still stick to that in the fire service. We don't have different tests for men or women. We're all passing the same tests, which I think
adds to the credibility in women in fire service. So that is an important thing to have when it comes down to it, and you're in your gear and you're in a fire. Gender is really irrelevant at that point. It's whether you can do the job or not.
Thank you, Sarah. Keep up the good work. Next up, we had Amy H. Dog, or H. Hyatt, who is a very good friend of mine and undoubtedly has seen the underbelly of life more than once. She was a very great guest, and I got a lot of really, really profound feedback about her. Some confessed crying when they listened to it, which I think shows the authenticity of what Amy was sharing. She was the breadwinner in her home, caregiver to both her husband and mother in their last stage of life, chief organizer of all things health-related, funeral-related, estate-related, and she served as the head of the house, plus had a full-time job. All of it was on her. The most profound thing for me was her explanation of a grief baby, and how as our grief grows, it becomes more independent from us. I've had many, many, many conversations with Amy, and I always learn something new when we chat. There was so much we didn't get to, her life after the loss. So we are looking at having her on to talk about those other chapters, the things that happened after what happened. Most favorable funny moment with her was that she considers whistling farting with your mouth. I haven't heard a whistle the same since, nor have I whistled myself in the same way without thinking about that and giggling. Here's a clip from that show with Amy.
So anger, righteous anger, it keeps you safe. It's an outlet. It's so powerful that it has to be used in extremely small doses. And it has to be very finite and very, very tailored and specific. Otherwise, it gets all over everything and it destroys. It's all metaphor, right? It's all metaphor. You have to know if you're gonna tap into it, to be extremely careful with it.
After, such a profound loss, how are you continuing to heal now, this many years? Your baby's, in school now. And so how do you nurture yourself? What does life look like today after that loss? Because from somebody who loves you and sits outside of that circle and sees you, I feel very much like you are rising now. And I feel like, it's been a very dark, difficult time for a lot of years, right? And even maybe after 3, it got a little easier, but I think still very, very difficult. And now I see you rising, and it's a pleasure to see that. But what's life like for you today?
It is wonderful. I'm 13 years in, and I'm benefiting from the wisdom of being in my mid-50s. All of those things that I didn't understand when I was younger about older women and how they don't give a fuck about certain things, and they just seem more confident. And I still have fucks to give, but I'm more particular about what I give them to. And it's my women friends that hold me up, that I'm able to hold up. I have learned that real strength is through vulnerability. I'm not interested in conversations that are about countertops and barbecue grills and bullshit. I'm interested in these kinds of conversations. I'm interested in people who have been through it and sharing not that victim mentality, but also hey, I'm suffering and I'm still going.
Thank you, H, for your unwavering honesty. Tough, but certainly a good lesson. Next up, we had Karen Lamb, and Karen Lamb is a very accomplished individual, kind of the trifecta of everything. She is a lawyer. She has worked in the fashion space. She is an accomplished horror film writer, producer, director, and she I believe, just finished her first show in a gallery as an artist as well. So I had not considered horror films that they have an intention or messaging behind them, kind of beyond the fear, and rather that they use fear as a tool to communicate or show the side of a situation that you maybe don't consider. I also thought it was really profound to think about how un-Chinese she was growing up in white bread, conservative Brandon, Manitoba, Canada. And I was a little bit sad to hear that she didn't go for certain things or attempt certain things because she just didn't think it would be attainable because nobody that looked like her was doing it. And then the gathering of the images of things that her father loved while he was still alive. And during his funeral, they would burn them so he could take them into his death and afterlife. I really love learning about other cultures and families and how they celebrate life and people and death. I also found it interesting that she used that grief to create profound horror films. Here is one of my favorite moments with that episode with Karen. What role does empathy play in horror?
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge portion of it. I think if you don't take the time to care about your main characters, then it's just a brutal onslaught of things. You know what I mean? And I'm not interested in just slaughter for the sake of slaughter. I think that if you don't feel the danger and the dread for your characters, you haven't done a good job as a filmmaker. I really do want you to care about the people that are in it. So I have a great deal of empathy, even for my villains. Like I have to, it's sort of like you should be able to watch it from their perspective and really understand it. So
that's very interesting. I was just going to ask you, are we meant, when we watch your films, are we meant to sympathize with the victims or the villain or both?
I think you should be able to see the point of both. You should hopefully be with the victim or the hero in my cases, because the victim is often also the hero. But I think you should be able to also see, hopefully, the humanity in, like, to me, evil isn't, I mean, there are true sociopaths out there, and I've done profiles on them when I was working in true crime. But for the most part, they're failed by the system too.
So when I watched your films, and again, I don't watch a lot of horror films, but it seemed very much like there's like very strong women characters in it. Like I don't remember very many movies like that I have watched where the women are the ones that are the villains, for lack of a better word, but certainly not the victims. Like it's like, even with Doll Parts, like you think she's the victim, but
I think in a lot of ways, the term they have in horror is the final girl. So a lot of times the one who survives often is the smart woman. And so it's interesting. Or the unlikely woman, the one who didn't take a shower or take off with the jock. You know what I mean? Like if you're looking at that sort of way. But I would say that it is in some ways more feminist than you would think, despite sometimes, some imagery and some like people who complain about horror films to me often say, oh, isn't that just a whole bunch of women getting slaughtered? I would say that probably because I do write, I think I'm drawn to horror as almost it's often elevated what I do in the idea that there's usually some political or some reason that I'm writing it. I tend not to write things just for the sake of it. There's something I'm trying to express on some levels. So Doll Parts led to my second feature, Evangeline, which is, looking at female revenge horror as a trope, but also as, well, if you took a more feminist slant on it, like I do look at things like, I don't, in Doll Parts even, just the idea of rape revenge, and a lot of times you're watching these things and it feels very exploitative because you're spending the whole time, sexually exploiting a woman, and then, the revenge is a small part of it. And I just thought, how do I desexualize something like that? So, the perspective is from her as much as I possibly can.
And thank you, Karen. What a delightful conversation after 35 years. And then we had Kyla Cottom, who does the marketing for Strong Like a Girl. She's given me a new take on marketing, and I can say this with complete honesty. Strong Like a Girl would not be where it is today without her. And I know that we're still in the infancy stage, but my infant would be starving without her. She has been an exceptional partner for me. And she really wanted to ask me some questions about my career and different experiences I've had. So this episode really showed me that I have a lot to tell that I certainly cannot fit in 20 to 30 minutes. One of the parts that I loved in this episode was during the rapid fire when I asked Kyla the question, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you reach the pearly gates? And she said, she's over there, referring to her mom, who she lost some years ago. It really, really struck me that the loss also had hope. The loss of her life had the hope of seeing her mother, that the end of the path for her was actually the beginning of a reunion. That sat on my heart for a long time, as my own mother faces some serious surgeries this year, and mostly just how much of our lives is impacted by loss and grief and how we carry that around. We hope to dive more into this in the coming shows. So here's a moment from that show with Kyla.
With that first Olympics Games that you had the opportunity for, what did you learn most about yourself? Was there a moment that nearly broke you and you're like, can't do this?
On my first day in Salt Lake, in the elevator riding up to the floor that you get off and you go to the orientation, there were some other folks there and they were like, wow, we never thought we'd see you again. Like, we thought you were done after Sydney. The Summer Olympics is a monster event. It's like literally the biggest event ever staged on Earth. And the scope of it it's just a very difficult thing to do well. And so it was my first Olympics, and I had road events, which is triathlon, road cycling, and the marathon. So all of that happens, the setup and everything for that happens at night, right? Because you can't take up the roadways for extended periods of time. And so I had those, and then I had beach volleyball, which was the first to be televised, and then I had triathlon, and then I had sailing. But it was like I slept in my car for days on end. Like I hadn't been home in I don't know how many days. I fell asleep driving in my car in the middle of the night one time. Like I was sleeping in my car in downtown Sydney while they were painting road graphics, right? I don't know if it nearly broke me, and it actually never made me consider not doing it again. But what it did do, and which I think I absolutely took into Salt Lake, was I'm never going to put people in a position to have this much work and not enough resources or time or whatever. And thank you, Kyla, for standing with me in all of this stormy weather. Then we had Michelle Cummings, the fabulous, adventurous woman, Michelle Cummings. The key thing I took away is how parents are creating experiential learning for their children. Michelle is a seasoned experiential learner and a trainer that works all over the world. And she shone a light on how we as leaders can use that skill in our day-to-day work with our teams. So for all of you folks out there that didn't love school because you don't likely learn like that or well in that way, take a listen to Michelle and see how smart you really are. The other thing I learned was the difference between team building and team development. Although I may have known it in some way, how she put words around it really made a lot of sense to me and also showed me how often I get it wrong. Both necessary, but not the same thing. Michelle has an arsenal of stories and lessons. If you are a facilitator or anybody that leads sessions or things like that, I encourage you to take a listen to this show with Michelle and see what you can take away from it. Here's one of my absolutely favorite moments with Michelle in that episode.
Yeah, stress and resiliency is definitely still high topics. And a lot of that, too, is just like agility, like how quickly when a stressor gets kind of introduced to someone, how agile are you? Are you able to kind of take that information and have a growth mindset? Like, oh, okay, this happened. What do I do with it? Or like a more of that fixed mindset, like, oh, my gosh, and go to that more like locus of control, like external locus of control versus that internal locus of control. So I do a lot of talking about that. AI is, of course, a huge topic of discussion right now. Is it going to take jobs? Is it going to, have a reduction in force? And a lot of organizations are saying yes to that. So there's just some fear and anxiety there. But there are still some conferences that they want connection activities. How do we make sure that people, especially coming out of COVID, I know we're 5 years out from COVID, but it's like people are still feeling really disconnected. Yep. And so how do we make sure that people are staying connected or strengthening relationships rather than having AI or whatever, being so digital? How does that drive disconnection rather than connection?
Thank you, Michelle, for your adventurous life and how it's proved to be a great lesson. Then we have Suzanne Dandino, who is absolutely a powerhouse person overall. Plus, she is the lead breadwinner in her family, an accomplished international athlete, a seasoned lawyer, and a community activist. She really reinforced for me the idea that we can have many careers and that pursuing one does not necessarily mean the detriment to the other, and that sometimes waiting or changing course is the best path to get to the other adventures. I also loved how her daughter, who was getting assessed for ADHD, helped her then get diagnosed herself. The interconnectedness of people in our circle and how just verbalizing things can help other people find their way too.
Ask for help. It's okay. Whether that's a mentor, somebody who can give you some guidance, who's been there, who learned some things that they wish they could give to someone else to make that step a bit easier. It really is about not doing it on your own, whether it's in sport, law, whatever your chosen passion is. But I guess maybe first and foremost is being passionate and wanting, make sure you love it. That is my first thing. If you don't love it, you are not going to be that good. Even if you were a great athlete, if you don't love that sport, you need to find something else. It's never too late. So I think it's making sure you love what you do, doing it with purpose, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
And I also loved how in the rapid fire she couldn't have a favorite curse word because she is beholden to the family rule where she can't curse. Great example, Suzanne. Thank you very much. I've mentioned a few times the feedback that we get, and so here are some of the great and kind comments I have received. Just listen to your podcast. I'm so proud of you. Fuck is my favorite word too. I now know that every day I have a win, a loss, and a lesson. Today your podcast was my lesson. I will get up tomorrow and be grateful. I just listened to the podcast you did with Heather, and it was incredible. I truly believe very few people understand how hard it is to do what you do. There is an art to sounding like you're just visiting in your kitchen, and you have that. You believe what you're asking and saying. It's so much easier to just stay quiet, but you will help so many women find their voices. Thank you, and keep finding amazing women so we can know them better. You have totally made me change my mind about Heather. Have a fab day, you strong like a girl. Holy fuck, crying hard here, grief babies. Well done. Now that is strong like a girl. Thank you, and thank Amy for sharing her story. I listened to Janet McMahon. Could have cried when she talked about ALS. And God, your first episode with Sarah Burke. Stay wild. Just so amazing. Keep doing what you're doing. Really loved the last podcast. You're so brave and just allowed yourself to be vulnerable. Knocked it out of the park. You have a knack for finding dynamic guests. So looking ahead, you will get to meet more strong girls and listen to more stories of triumph, grief, and life's twists and turns. Our hope is that you not only enjoy the episodes, but that in some way they help to reinforce your own understanding of your strength and how it looks different for all of us. Being strong, like a girl, is a badge of honor, and I hope you wear it well. And in case you haven't heard, we also launched a new merchandise shop. You can find the link to that shop on our website, stronglikeagirl.ca, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Thank you again to our listeners, Sarah and her team at Women in Media, Kyla and her expertise, and everyone who sent me a kind note or message. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Special shout out to our sponsors, Lisa Andrew from BDO Canada LLP, Linda Fichter of Styles Farms, Suzanne Dandino, Sue Swarbrick from Budget Blinds of Southwest Manitoba, Lois Rustin with the YW Westman, Andrea Epp of Epp Law Office, and Heather Stephenson. You can leave a voice note to send your stories or reactions to what we talked about today at stronglikeagirlpodcast.ca, or maybe you know a strong girl you think we should have on the show. Subscribe and follow wherever you get your podcasts, and please leave us a review. Thank you very much for listening. Stay wild.